Yes, thank everybody for attending today. I do want to just let you know if you have any questions or any comments, you can throw them in the chat box. If you want to see if that chat box is working, you can go and throw in a thumbs up, a hey, a yes, or if you want, throw in your favorite food. I'm a big foodie, and we'll talk about that here in a second. We're not just going to talk about cybersecurity today, but I'm a big foodie, so I could add it to my to-do list or my trying list if that helps. But today, I know you all have a little bio about me, but we're going to talk about, of course, cyber threats and the proper steps to take to at least put you in the best position to prevent, or at least prepare yourself to prevent cyber attacks in the future. Now, a little bit about me. I know you have that bio. You can consider me an IT or in cybersecurity consultant. You can say expert. That just makes me smile a little bit. But I've been working in this field for a while now. And really what I do is I work with an organization and evaluate their current state, see what tools and practices that you have going on at the moment regarding IT and security. And then from that, I work with that organization to help create a customized plan to show, hey, these are some potential vulnerabilities and gaps that you have. And then, of course, I give you recommendations to fill those gaps or address those vulnerabilities. And all of that is completely free. Now, if it makes sense for us to work together in the future and take care of those, take care of those problems for you, of course, that's where we come in and take care of that. Now, you'll see here, Little League coach. I am very passionate about coaching. And so I've coached here in the community here in Arkansas for the past 8 to 10 years. That goes from T-ball to 5th and 6th grade baseball, basketball, soccer. I did soccer once. I probably won't do that again because I don't think the kids got too much out of it. Sorry, but I don't know why they keep switching. But also you'll see food connoisseur on there. So that's why I ask if you have any special foods or anything that that you'd like for me to try, because I'll definitely add that to my to-do list. And Jennifer put that in as I am a newlywed. I just got married 2 weeks ago. And so we're celebrating that, just got back from the honeymoon. But overall, I'm happy to be here today. Now, a little bit about Kirkham Irontech. We provide a lot of different range of services. We have multiple different options. Of course, managed cybersecurity services where we can provide and overall manage all of the security tools and services that you may need, and of course, implement those, put those in place for you. Now, we also have the IT capabilities as well, but something that's a little bit newer is, to most organizations, is co-managed services, where say you have an assessment done, but you already have someone in-house who manages and takes care of your IT. Well, we will partner with that current provider and overall help you, of course, increase productivity, create that security first environment that you are wanting, or help you implement the security tools that you may have to address any of those gaps that we find in that assessment. And then, of course, as you can see on the list, escalate efficiency and, of course, improve customer support or customer experience. Now, we don't have like a one-size-fits-all offer for different organizations. Every company gets a customized approach and has custom services and custom tools to make sure their exact needs are fit or taken care of. Now, if you have questions regarding anything that we do at Kirkham Irontech or want more information, feel free to throw that in the chat box. I will share some links just with some general information that may be beneficial down the road, and it may answer some of those questions. As we go through, I'll also put my meeting link in the chat box. So if you have questions or if you're interested in the assessment that we'll talk about, or just overall want to talk about cybersecurity and your concerns, you can use that link. We can chat briefly. And overall, of course, I want to get to know you all a little bit more. And I hope that we get a chance to talk here in the future. Now, why are we meeting today? A lot of people consider us the go-to IT and cybersecurity experts for your industry, and of course, for your members as well. Now, myself and our founder and CEO, Tom Kirkham, we present hundreds of CLEs and overall educational material, excuse me, year to year. And we overall educate lawyers on changing threats and security, how to prepare for those risks. And we also do podcasts, short little videos discussing specific topics regarding cybersecurity, as well as monthly webinars where we may pick a specific topic like cybersecurity training and discuss why that's important, how to implement that for different organizations. So overall, we have lots of educational material that is free to the public for you all to use internally, share with your employees, your family, or your members. And that's all out on YouTube or our website. You can really just look up Kirkham Irontech and find a long list of different educational pieces and overall resources to use and share as needed. And also, if you're looking for something specific, you can feel free to reach out, and I'll make sure you get the information that you need. Now, the real reason we are here today is because of cyber threats, cyber attacks. It's something that you all are probably hearing about every single day, something that I work with and am in the industry every single day and working with our clients to overall mitigate as many risks as possible regarding cyber attacks. But the matter of the fact is that cyber threats are changing every single year, and they're really changing every day. And as technology advances and our dependence to utilize technology in our everyday operations increases, because of that dependence, cyber threats have skyrocketed simply because something that we depend on so heavily can so easily be taken away or manipulated or overall held for ransom. We'll talk about ransomware, ransom attacks here in a little bit, because it's so easy to manipulate and hold our technology for ransom. That's why we're seeing such an increase in cyber attacks, because if you think about it, cybercrime is a business. And as of right now, it's extremely profitable for cyber attackers because all organizations all over the country and all different fields are really behind on putting the proper, or what we like to say, best in class or best practice preventative security measures in place. A lot of organizations are behind on that fact. And so it's to a cyber attacker, they're thinking in conversion rates. And if they can attack as many organizations as possible and just get 1 to 2% to fall for maybe a phishing email, or they just need 1 to 2% of those potential attacks to be successful, that's a huge payday for cyber attackers. And now that's why when we usually say it's not a matter of if, it's when. It's because everyone is at risk to cyber threats. It doesn't matter if you're a one-person law firm or a 50+ employee organization. Everyone's at risk. And if you're not putting the proper preventative measures in place, then as we go through these statistics, you may become one of those. And so cyber threats, they're increasing every year, but of course there's things that you can do to prepare for them and eliminate as many potential threats as possible. Now, I do want to point out the bottom corner of that quote there, but it just points out, especially to me, that there are tons of cybersecurity tools that you can throw at your organization and hope that they're the right ones, hope that they work. And of course, that can be very costly, but there is an efficient way to help understand and really reveal what exact risks you have and of course need to address. And regarding how to address them is what we'll discuss today. How to figure out what risk you have is what we're going to talk about today. But overall, regarding the types of threats and what your number one threat is, we'll dive into that a little bit here. So I'll put a list of threats here, and we'll go through each one. And some of these you may have heard of, and some of them you may not have heard of. But of course, a ransomware attack It's probably the most commonly known, probably is what you hear about often. And basically, it's where, say, you have a new employee and they get an email, they click on a link, and now it ended up being malicious. And this is a very brief example, but now basically all of your files and computers are unusable and they're being held for ransom. Basically, you'll not be able to use them again or do anything until you pay, say, $1 million. Now, that's what you hear about a lot, and that happens way more often than not. But of course, some things to think about regarding a ransomware attack, or if you're experiencing a ransomware attack, is how long can you actually be down? What is the price of being down for so long? What is the price of your reputation? Because in certain industries and in yours, clients or employees or members are affected. You have to make that aware, make it known to those members, and of course, your reputation is affected by that. But also, how does it affect your members or your employees, knowing that their information could potentially be compromised, or that they may not be able to work for a week or two?
Gavin, can I ask you a question? I meant to ask you at the beginning, do you want questions saved to the end or as you're going along?
Yeah, just throw them in the chat box, and then I'll either answer them right away, or I'll make sure to catch them at the end.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, 100%. Regarding ransomware attacks, so 60% of organizations that experience a ransomware attack go out of business in the next 2 years. And so ransomware attack is definitely something that is one of the biggest threats, but it's not the biggest. Now, phishing attempts and phishing attacks, I'm going to actually talk about that at the end of this slide, because that is one of the biggest, or it's involved in one of the biggest threats. Now, drive-by attacks, some people may not be aware of this, but this is where, say you go on to a user visits a website that they thought was trusted, they thought was secure, and it ends up being a malicious website. And by going on that website, something is downloaded onto the computer that is malicious, or overall an infection, a virus, excuse me. And from that, the attacker may be able to gain knowledge about the user, what information is on that device. But overall, I was simply going onto a website that is malicious. There is a potential risk with that. Now, these risks, we'll talk about ways to, of course, combat them, or hopefully eliminate these threats. Now, compromised emails, that is something that is becoming extremely more common here in the past few years. And when we talk about compromised emails, say you have an email that you use for your business, and you have a login and password for that email. But say that password is something that you use for multiple different accounts. And if that password becomes compromised, now someone can log into your email, act as you, and email another employee asking maybe to go get these gift cards and send them to this account, or asking for specific information on another employee or the overall organization. Now, these specific compromised email attacks, they are extremely difficult to figure out, simply because all the activity that is coming from this compromised email looks like it's coming from you, from that trusted employee. And so they could send hundreds of emails and delete them out of the send box, and you have no idea what happened. And so these compromised emails is something that we're working with our clients on, making sure they're prepared for, but also there's simple fixes, such as having a long, extensive password, maybe a passphrase like the cow jumped over the moon for your email, but also using multi-factor authentication. So if that password you use for your email does become compromised, now when they try and access it, they also have to, at least for me, reach into my pocket, pull out my phone, and get the maybe 3 to 4 characters that are texted to me to just overall log into that email. But that also goes hand in hand with compromised banking, financial information, confidential information regarding your organization or your overall members. Regarding password and login compromises, those are things that are at risk and some of the biggest threats. Now, the number one threat that we work with our clients on preparing for, and that you all should definitely be thinking about and overall preparing for, is human error. Now, you'll see that 95% of cyber attacks are really successful cyber attacks are triggered by the staff. And now that doesn't mean your employees are malicious cyber attackers, or they're actively trying to hack into your network. No, this is simply from human error. Everyone here gets busy. Everyone here probably gets tons of emails from tons of different people. And when we talk about phishing attacks or phishing emails, that's simply an email that may look like it's coming from a trusted source, and they say, hey, can you click on this link real quick? I need you to check this out. Or can you update your email password because it's out of date? We just need you to type it in real fast. If you're in a hurry, having a busy day, you see this email, yeah, no problem. Type it in, click on the link, go about your day. You are giving basically that cyber attacker the keys to the kingdom. You're opening the door for them simply because you were in a hurry, or you just may have not been paying attention to other things on your mind. That aspect of human error is inevitable, and but there is a way to at least lower that percentage, or at least prepare your employees regarding cybersecurity training to know what to look out for in an email like that. To train them on, hey, there's specific steps you need to take when you get an email from someone you're not too sure about, what to look out for, who the sender is there an attachment, are they asking to do something in a hurry? There's lots of different training tools that you can use to mitigate all of these threats. And that's something in an assessment that you'll understand, hey, this is a threat. Do I have something to combat this, or do I have something to prevent this? If not, well, we definitely need to address that and look into getting something to make sure that that threat is taken care of. Now, a few statistics to think about as we get deeper in here. On average, only 5% of companies' folders are properly protected. Now, it says folders, that could be just overall data, employee data, your members' information. And the questions to think about when talking about how you protect your data is, how are you storing your data? Is it on a server? Is it on the workstation? Is it a little mix of both? What's your policy on storing information? And wherever that information is stored, also think about, how is it being protected? What security do you have in place to secure your organization's information, or your employees' information, your overall members of your association's information? That was a little tongue twister there, but think about that. And if the answer is nothing, also in this webinar, put things in the chat. This is a judge-free zone. If you don't have any security in place at all, there's no problem with that. That's why we're here. But also, on the other side of things, now think if, and we talked about ransomware attack, if you were unable to access these folders and data, what kind of impact would that have on your organization? Do you have a plan in place if these things happen? Of course, there's backups. Have you tested the backups? Have you tested the restores of the backups? There's lots of different things that go into securing your data, and overall response plans. If something happens, how are you going to get back and running to access that data? And all of these stats show is that organizations are trying to catch up, and they're overall behind on securing their data, and overall having a plan to protect and, of course, respond if something does happen to their data. This is one that we're starting to talk about a little bit more, and it's regarding cyber fatigue. Now, what is cyber fatigue? What do you mean by that? Cyber fatigue is a real thing, and a lot of organizations are experiencing it now, but cyber fatigue is, and you all may be able to relate, I've been able to relate at times, but it's basically giving up on proactively trying to defend against cyber attacks, or overall trying to figure out this crazy world of cybersecurity and IT, you're just overwhelmed by the sheer amount of cyber threats. Maybe you have something in place that sends you updates of how many cyber alerts or threats you're getting every day. And it looks like everything you're trying to do is just not enough. And at this point, you're just overwhelmed and hoping that you won't have a successful cyber attack, or just waiting, say, okay, I'll get to that later in the year, or maybe next year. That's in our plan for next year. And that's simply because, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, there's just so much information regarding cybersecurity, the different tools, the different services, the different threats. And so instead of just trying to do something, or throwing as many security products that you can at the organization, a lot of companies are just stepping back and saying, hey, we'll deal with it later. There's overall doing nothing. And to me, that's like you have a front door in your house, but you can't figure out the lock, so you just leave the door open and just hope nobody walks in. I know that's a little exaggerated, but it's the truth, because it's not a matter of if you'll be a victim of a cyber attack, it's when. And so cyber fatigue is increasing with all organizations. And so that's where we come in to, of course, help you with whatever cyber risk or questions or whatever you may have regarding cybersecurity. We're here to help at least take care of it, manage it, show you what's important or what's the most important right now for your organization. And then, of course, the little things, or we help you plan out to address these things step by step, so you're not overwhelmed with everything all at once. Next year, of course, ransomware attacks is something we've been talking about. And for just Q1 of this year, the average ransomware payment is a little over $300,000. Now, if you got that in your pocket and you're ready to pay that ransom, okay, perfect. You maybe click off of this. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that. Just to put it into scale, that's the updated number of this year. The past numbers, ransomware payments increased from 2020 to 2021 at a rate of 144%. That was the average increase of ransomware payments. And the average reported ransomware payment, now this number could be increased, or could increase back in 2022. The average payment was 4.7 million for all organizations. Now that could be a one-person law firm getting hit with a ransomware attack and having to pay $100,000, or they could have been tacked on for $500,000. You never know, but it shows that this year the average ransomware payments, they're just getting started. And so, of course, at the end of the year we'll have some updated numbers, but if we had a 144% increase from 2020 to 2021, I can't imagine what the increase is going to be this year. Now, this is something that I thought you all probably are definitely aware of, and probably heard lots of information about, and maybe the reason that you wanted to hop on this today. But of course, the American Bar Association, they had a recent breach this year. And I'll talk a little bit about the details here, but in short, the ABA, they had a breach, I believe it was in March. And overall, hackers were able to compromise their network and gain access to some older credentials for over 1.4 million members. Now, I believe it goes back to from 2018 past, or 2018 to now, somewhere around there. But all of those logins, passwords, things like that were breached for those older members. And ABA had to make an announcement, let these members know what was going on. And there's been lots of different reports and articles on it that, of course, highly recommend just going to read. They're not too lengthy, but they give some good information on overall what happened. Excuse me. But quick breakdown of events, just to put in perspective how it went about. So on early March, about March 6th-ish, around there, cyber attackers gained access to the ABA network, and then they began acquiring information. And now I have this information because now that the breach has been taken care of, they've released this timeline of events to share with the public. And so early March, the cyber attackers gained access. On March 17th, about 10 plus days after that, when you're talking about cyber attacks, every second counts. And so having almost 10 days plus of the cyber attackers being on their network, those breaches are just what we heard about. There could be a lot more that happened, a lot more at risk just because they were on there for so long. But overall, around March 17th, they began noticing some abnormal, unusual activity on their network. And then they started their incident response plan. Luckily, they had one in place. They called an outsourced cybersecurity team. It wasn't the cybersecurity team that was managing their network, or hopefully this would have been avoided, but they called a team to start investigating the issue. And then on March 23rd, so more time has passed, the cyber attackers have spent more time on the network now. They were able to identify that the usernames and passwords of over 1.4 million members had been breached. And so almost over a month, they had the cyber attackers had been on the network for that long. Then they investigated to find out what was going on. And then they actually found out the damage. And now all of this could have been avoided if they had had a cybersecurity team continuously managing and operating and reviewing their network, continuously looking for this unusual activity. But this specific breach and all the breaches that are happening in today's time is why we're here today. And overall is why I'm going to help you all protect your organizations, your staff, your members, and overall your reputation as well. Well, let's jump right into it. We know what is at stake regarding a cyber attack. And you can see it right here, definitely highlighted. You can see at the bottom, release of members' data, like we just discussed in the ADA breach. And we've seen happen recently, and of course, happen continuously to lots of different associations, organizations, any type of business, really. And regarding what's at stake, there's tons of cybersecurity tools out there, but how do you get started? How do you figure out, okay, I know what the risks are. I know what's at stake regarding my organization. What do I need to do? And so first thing we recommend, one of the first things is you need to understand what compliances or cybersecurity regulations that you are currently being required to meet. Now, regarding industry standards, of course, in your industry, you all do have lots of different regulations, compliances to meet. And of course, we'll talk about cyber insurance as well, but a lot for your members as well. They have certain compliances and regulations that they need to meet. And regarding cybersecurity regulations for all industries, if there is an industry that maybe you work in on the side, or you know someone else that works in, if they're not being regulated regarding cybersecurity, they will be soon. And from my professional opinion, I believe in the next year or two, cybersecurity is becoming extremely important for all businesses. And so if there's not regulations in place today, like I said, they will be very, very soon. And more industries are being affected every single year. And so specifically for your members, definitely in the legal industry, a lot of them are affected by RPC, as well as a few other regulating firms. But what they need kind of goes hand in hand with what you all need to be, because of course you all and your members have confidential information from their clients and your members. And so regarding RPC, we're going to dive into that a little bit deeper, but one of the things is talking about making a reasonable effort. And a lot of people nowadays say, hey, I have an antivirus. I'm using, Norton or McAfee on my computer. That's good enough. And we'll definitely talk about that here in a little bit, but we mentioned how cyber threats are evolving and technology is evolving, and your cybersecurity has to as well. And companies, and especially cyber insurance, they're realizing that Antiviruses are not enough. Cyber insurance companies got slammed by having to pay multiple claims over the past couple of years, lost tons of money simply because they realized that their security regulations for the companies that had cyber insurance policies with them was not enough. And so they're increasing their compliances and regulations, and many other industries will be too. Let's see, but with all of these regulations in place, ask yourself the question, who is in charge of compliance for me? Who does compliance, or who takes care of the compliance for your association? And are you compliant currently? Do you have the proper security measures in place to be compliant with your cyber insurance policy? And if not, how are you going to figure that out? If something changes, how will you know? And how will you make the necessary changes to make sure you're compliant and make sure you're not having to catch up regarding the cybersecurity curve? Now, we talked briefly about RPC. I know most of you are aware of this, as well as your members are aware of this. And if your members aren't, I highly recommend at least sharing this video or making sure they're on track to become compliant regarding security. And we'll talk about assessment, but making sure they get that assessment as well to make sure they're reaching or make sure they're meeting these regulations. But I do want to point out, I said this briefly, shall make reasonable efforts. Now, those reasonable efforts are going to become more strict and strict as time goes on, simply because people are realizing that tools like antivirus are not enough. And so how do you figure out what you do need? How do you figure out what is enough? How do you figure out what is best practices? That's where using a cybersecurity framework comes into play. And we're really going to dig into this and focus on the two first areas. But when you look into what security you have at the moment, you're starting to review your internal practices, what you have in place for security, what you have in place for IT. It's good to rely on a framework. And specifically, this cybersecurity framework helps show you what best practices are, especially in your industry. Utilizing this framework is extremely important to understand what you need to secure your business and overall what is the best of the best regarding security. Now, this framework is the NIST CSF, and this really is the gold standard regarding cybersecurity. And if you go through an assessment and you say, hey, is this NIST compliant or is this based off NIST? And they say no, then I would, or if they don't even know what NIST is, I would question that assessment and make sure, hey, can you make sure this meets some of the NIST requirements, or at least is referencing NIST? Because NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and it's really being utilized nationwide and really almost internationally as the gold standard for cybersecurity frameworks and overall cybersecurity assessment. And so today we're going to focus mostly on those first two sections, the identify and protect sections. Now, those are the first steps, of course, getting to detect, respond, and recover. But identify, that is the actual assessment, understanding what you have in place, identifying those vulnerabilities. And then from that, once you move on to the next step, now you've gotten the recommendations to implement and now start protecting, start protecting your organization, start protecting your association. And once those tools are in place, now you've implemented them. You have a cybersecurity team to manage them and begin detecting for any potential threats or anomalous or out of the ordinary behavior on your network that, of course, could lead into a successful cyber attack. And then say there is an alert, say there is something going on in your network. Now, by using this framework and planning properly, you have a response plan to react or respond to that detected threat. And then if there's any damage done, you also have that recovery plan in place as well to say if some data is lost or affected. Now, to eliminate as much downtime as possible, you have that recovery plan in place to either recover that data or restore your use your backups to restore and get back up and running. All these 5 steps are extremely important in building your overall cybersecurity framework, your cybersecurity plan for your association. But it all starts with step 1, identify. Now, I have a quick question in here, and you don't have to answer. If you want to throw it in the chat, you can. But when was the last time you had a cybersecurity assessment? If you've had one recently, or if you've had one at all, has anything changed since then? If you haven't gotten one, if you don't take anything else away from this webinar, you need to get one ASAP, or at least plan to get one as soon as possible. Because like we've been talking about, there's no way to understand what vulnerabilities or risk you have at the moment without starting from step 1 and having that assessment done. And this is where the identify stage comes into play, because this is where you really, you really dig in to identifying the risk, understanding the state of your ship, understanding what you have in place, and where to move forward. So why do you need to identify first? You need to evaluate. You need to understand what you have at the moment. Say you don't have a password policy in place at the moment. Maybe everyone just has an Excel sheet that they use to store their logins and passwords. Now that's convenient, but of course there's a risk with that. Maybe you have some remote workers and they just utilize their laptop that they use for personal use just to remote in to a desktop at home. Of course, there's a risk associated with that. Maybe you are utilizing antivirus at the moment solely to detect threats and stop threats on your device. Now, it seems like it's working, but of course, there's a risk associated with that. But also, like we talk about compliances, how will you know if you're compliant with what you need to be if you don't look and see, okay, this is exactly what I need in place? Say you do have that cyber insurance policy. What we do with our clients is we love to review that policy with them and say, the cyber insurance policy requires that you have an endpoint detection and response tool on every device. And say you didn't see that, or say you just marked yes because you were going through the checkbox trying to just get the policy. And now you do have a cyber attack and you try to submit a claim, and now they go look and say, hey, do you have EDR? They really look and you don't have it. Now that gives them the ammo that they need to deny that or decline that claim. And now you're just stuck with a ransomware attack and out of business for maybe the next 2-3 weeks until hopefully you get all your information back, if you do. And so that first step of identifying what you have and what you have currently is extremely important, just to reveal those vulnerabilities. Now, what can you expect from that first step, that starting that assessment? Well, what you can expect is about 2 30 to 60-minute meetings. And that, of course, is dependent on how big the organization, the amount of information you're working with, all the things that you have in place currently. And in that first meeting, it'll just strictly be information gathering. Anytime we talk, it's a judgment-free zone. And so specifically for our assessment, that first meeting, gather all the information that we can as much as possible. And you can, if you have an IT provider, you can allow them to join on as well. But if not, that's completely fine. We won't get extremely technical, but it's overall allows us to, one, understand and evaluate your current network. We'll discuss any regulations or compliances that you have, discuss your cyber insurance policy. And if you don't have one, maybe you're wanting to get one. And so we'll help advise on what you need to have the best chance at getting that policy. Now, we don't sell them, but of course, we can advise and consult. We'll discuss current practices that you have. I mentioned password management. Do you have an incident response plan in place? Do you have backups? If you do have backups, what's your practice with those? Are those tested? Are the restores of those backups tested? Which more common than not, a lot of people have backups, but they haven't tested their restores. And so just a quick example, I she's now a client, but before they were a client, they had backups that I believe they backed up weekly. And they are a nonprofit, and they had an audit coming up. And so they had to go back and look at the past 6 months of data and for this audit. And what happened was their backups weren't actually working. They thought they were. And when they tried to go back and get that information or pull that information from them, there was a 6-month gap. And so I know that sounds horrible. That's worst case scenario, but it happens. And if those backups aren't tested and those restores aren't tested, when you actually need them for that response plan that you have, those aren't up and running, then that response plan can be thrown out the window simply because something was missed, or just you thought something, you assumed something was working and it really wasn't. We talk about all those things in our assessment. And then, of course, we'll advise on those, but we'll get to that in the second step as well. Another thing is maybe an acceptable use policy. A lot of people are working from home or working remote or traveling. And if you don't have an acceptable use policy in place, such as they have to use a company-owned laptop when working, or when you bring your laptop in the office or work remote, you want to use your personal, you have to have these specific security controls on there to eliminate the risk of a potential breach. Things like that are some simple areas that we'll talk about, and that's just some brief examples, but we'll really dig in that first meeting of what you currently have. Just address the current state of the ship, understand what you all have at the moment, and really take a holistic approach of understanding not only your IT network, but also your security network as well. Now, from here, we take all of that information, and I work with our IT and security specialists to really dig in and look into this information and start building your assessment. And right here, you can see a brief example, and I'll go into a little bit deeper example of an assessment. But we take all that information, review it with our team, and then build this, and you'll have a specific audit or assessment for your organization with these areas addressed. And so I don't know if you can see that, but in the middle, we'll just go with the middle box. There's a box called password management. And so in our first meeting, we would have talked about the password policy that you have in place, or just your overall current password practice. And so say you don't have anything at all, or maybe you're using sticky notes to store your login and passwords, which is common, but of course there's a risk associated. In this second meeting, we'll discuss why we saw this as a risk. Of course, the risk associated with continuing this practice. And then we'll go through different areas such as email encryption. Now, in this specific example, that box is green. And it could be green because at the moment, maybe you're not using email encryption and it's not a current need. But if you do have email encryption and you're maybe sending confidential information regarding members between faculty, or you're receiving confidential information from members or clients, and you're using email encryption, that's a good practice. We want to show you, one, the good things that you're doing already, and then be able to focus on the areas that need improvement. And so our assessment is broken down into 4 sections. This shows 2 at the moment, but we'll walk through each of these different areas, and we'll mark them by importance or overall highest risk associated. So red box, of course, you need to address these as soon as possible. These are immediate risks that if they're not addressed, you will have a cyber attack sooner than later. There may be a yellow area that's medium risk that we need to plan to implement something maybe here soon if possible, or if if we're not able to at the moment, maybe in the next 6 months, 3 months, a year, plan to implement this to overall address this risk that you have at the moment. Overall, from that, we build this assessment for you. We customize it to your specific organization. And in that second meeting, we will then also reveal the plan that this is what this is what you need to get to this future state. All green boxes, no vulnerabilities, and you have layers of security. And from that, like I said, we built this specific to your association. We have exact recommendations on how to address these potential vulnerabilities that you may have. And one thing I do want to point out is that cybersecurity, it's not do it yourself anymore. You need professionals. And so with these recommendations, you can take this and run with it. You can store it in your back pocket until you're ready. Or, of course, what we advise is to act on it. And if it makes sense for us to help you all implement these recommendations to eliminate those vulnerabilities, of course, we're more than happy to. But overall, these recommendations are best in class. They're best practice. And when we say best in class, best practice, it's not just us saying this. We've done the research regarding our specific recommendations that we make. And we've also tested these tools and different security practices for our clients. So when we do recommend them, you can rest assured that, yes, I am not settling on a subpar security tool. This is coming from professionals. This is what I need. And this will help me prevent cyber attacks in the near future. But overall, with all of that information regarding this is where we currently are, this is where we need to be, this is how we get there, the overall goal is to address all of the vulnerabilities that you may have. Build layers of security, layers of defense to create the security first culture or security first organization that you all have or are wanting. And then, of course, help you implement those preventative measures while making sure you have the proper response plan if anything happens, and really just addressing those 5 stages that we talked about in NIST and making sure you have all of those taken care of and nothing's missed. And from that, of course, you will get peak performance, but also the security that you need in today's time to mainly gain peace of mind. Sleep easy at night, knowing that in the morning you will not wake up to a cyber attack. And I know you can't put a price on that, but the organizations that have the proper security measures in place and know that they have what they need definitely have a less stressful life, especially with the increase in cyber attacks. It's just needed, and it's a part of business now. And these assessments will allow you to stay ahead of the security curve and not become one of the statistics that we've talked about today. Now, these assessments definitely I recommend should be done on a regular basis because, like I said, cyber threats change. They change very often, and so security must as well. And so say you do have an IT team in place, they take care of your security, that's great. We still recommend having this assessment at least once a year to make sure there's no vulnerabilities or gaps that we may be missing or that you may be missing. And of course, this is something that can be done for you, your organization, your employees, your members. All of this is to overall, one, get the security in place that you need, but overall gain that peace of mind that that is needed in today's time. Now, we do have a special offer. We've talked about the assessment, we've talked about security, we've talked about the risk and the threats associated with cybersecurity and cyber attacks now. And so what do you need to do? Take action. Jenna asked if I have a slide with your contact information for the audit. Yes, I do. So that special offer is a free security and risk assessment. You can take a screenshot of this page if you'd like. I'll also put my meeting link in the chat box as well. I'm going to touch on the questions that were asked here in a second as well. But this security assessment that we talked about in this webinar, it's completely free. It takes us about 2 meetings, 30 to 60 minutes per meeting. And if you have questions about the assessment, or maybe you just have a specific part of the assessment you'd like to ask about or information on, you can email me at the email below, or feel free to call at that number. That's my direct line. So you'll be talking to me. We can talk about the webinar. I can answer questions that way as well. But we can also get you set up with that assessment here soon. Now, I am offering this free to you all, but if you have members or friends or family that this would be beneficial for as well, I'll be happy to extend this special offer to them. Now, I told you I'd get y'all out of here on time. I want to make sure I answer these questions, and we have a few good questions here that I want to make sure and get to. The first one, does ransomware affect your hardware too? If you regularly back up, are you in a better position? So first part of that question, does ransomware affect your hardware too? My immediate response is yes. Now, there's different types of ransomware attacks that can affect different parts of a network, overall device. But yes, a lot of the times, if there is a successful ransomware attack on a network or on a device, you may go through the process of getting the attack off of, or the malicious activity off of the device. But a lot of times that cyber attacker will create a backdoor. And so basically, if there was a successful attack, you clean it up, the cyber attackers created a backdoor. So now in maybe 6 months or the next year, they have a backdoor into your network again to have another successful attack, or and hopefully an easy payday for them. Which usually, I believe it's over 50% of companies that have one ransomware attack have another ransomware attack in the next year. And so regarding affecting your hardware, my immediate response is yes. Now, that second part of the question, if you regularly back up, are you in a better position? I would say no. Well, better position, yes, because it's always good to regularly back up just in case data is lost or something does happen to the data. But in a better position to stop a ransomware attack or cyber attack, I would say no. I would recommend Jennifer, I know this is a tool that we provide for you. I would recommend an EDR, or endpoint detection and response tool. That would put you in the best position to avoid and prevent a cyber attack. But if you have a tool in place and you have those backups, if that preventative measure fails, that antivirus, if that, or that EDR, if that fails, definitely it's good that you have those backups in place. So to eliminate downtime, you can get back up and running as soon as possible. Now, another question was, in protecting a client, do emails get siphoned through a screen at your end to catch any bad links? There are tools that you can implement, and this is something that we talk about in our assessment. There are tools that you can implement to screen or try and or kind of filter either spam emails or potential risky or malicious phishing emails, possibly, or just overall malicious emails, to specifically screen for bad links. There's not a tool that we use at the moment or that I'm aware of, but quick free tip: if you do get an email with a link attached, don't immediately click on it. You can put your little mouse key pointer over and hover that link and it should pull up. It won't, don't click on it, but it just hover over and it should show actually what that link goes to, or if it matches kind of the description that's in that email. That's a good way to kind of see if it's legit or not before actually clicking on it. But I also recommend, if you have a cybersecurity team and you get an email that you're not too sure about, send that over to your cybersecurity team. Something that we do often for our clients, but we call it a sandbox, but we test that email out in there, see if the link's legit. If it's not, we'll say, hey, yeah, stay away from this. Make sure your employees do as well, or we'll let you know, hey, it's good to go. Click and have fun. Let's see, and then slide with contact information all here. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm going to throw in my meeting link here in the chat box as well. So feel free to save that and use it as you wish. I'm also going to throw in another link to some additional information regarding our assessment. So one moment, I will send that in there. We have a video kind of describing, and that will set expectations, but also a little handout that is helpful as well. Now, if you have any other questions, maybe that wasn't it. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. I will definitely be happy to help. And Jennifer, if you get any other questions, send them my way, and I'll be happy to be a helpful resource for you all.